Hey guys, welcome back. Earlier today I made a video of painting the journey cabinet, and now I am working on this trunk lid for this 59 Impala. I went ahead and sanded down the underside of the trunk lid. I was going to videotape it, but it's kind of boring. It's just 320 grit sanding. I used the DA and I hand sanded the areas that the DA wouldn't get to. As far as that, this is ready to get flipped over and start block sanding the top side. This will sit until after the top is painted and dried. Then I will come in and epoxy primer the underside and paint the underside. No reason to be filler priming or anything like that underneath here. It's pretty nice, pretty smooth, pretty clean. No real rust at all. All the pinch seams and everything are really nice. I sanded out some of the seam sealer that was in here. It was kind of heavy. I don't know if that was original from the factory or if somebody had gone over it. It sanded down nice and there was no rust underneath it. There is still some seam sealer between the two joints. You want to keep some in there because there's always rust on the inside of these panels. Nothing major, just some minor surface rust. And what happens is sometimes when you wash the car or it gets wet, if you don't have the seam sealer in these joints, literally like rusty water could drip out, especially on a white paint job. If you have a white paint job and you don't re-seam seal your doors and stuff like that, you'll literally see like rust lines coming down the rocker panels on the car. If you're wondering what these bare metal areas are, it had an insulation inside each one of these, which I cut out with my knife. These old 59 Impala trunk lids had an insulation pad that is underneath this whole area, and then they bonded the two metals together. I cut these out. They make new pieces that are already formed, already cut to these openings that you glue in. So after I epoxy primer all this and paint it, I can glue the new ones in. The factory never even really did much of anything. They might have put a little bit of red oxide primer. I did see a little bit here and there when I was sanding this down, but that was about it. They didn't care. They just glued this mat between the two surfaces, and it is what it is. I honestly don't even know if they really glued it much, a little bit. But other than that, we're gonna get this flipped over and start block sanding the top side down. When you set panels on these stands, you gotta be careful how you place them on the stands, because if you notice the direction I have this trunk lid on this stand, it is to not leave any creases in the trunk lid when it's sitting on the stand. If you would go the other direction, you could run the risk of maybe putting a small dent in it, especially on newer vehicles because the metal is so thin. So I'm going to flip this over and then we can start block sanding out the top side. We're gonna start with 180 grit again. I'm going to guide coat it, just like we did that door the other night. I'll show you how I kind of do this trunk lid because of the way that it comes down there with that weird roll for the trunk lid. Put a nice good coat on here, nice and thick. I'm going to 180 block sand it, 320 block sand it, just like the door. I'll probably only show you guys the 180 block sanding. I don't know if I'll even film all of it. You already got an idea how I do it. But to get this done, I'm going to sand down a couple balances real quick and get them in the spray booth so I can get them painted. The balances are blue still, teal color, whatever the color this is. I do not filler prime them. They didn't need it. They're not dented up or anything like that. They just need to be scuffed down and repainted. So there we go. The guide coat is on. Get my sander here and some 180 grit. I'm going to finish up using this piece of 180 from the other night. Make sure it's 180, there we go. Still got a little life left in this one.
Now on this one, this divot right here goes all the way up. So I kind of like to go this way with it. So like the block kind of goes up and down, up and down. And we're going to do the same thing we did with the door. Don't put a lot of pressure. Let the sandpaper do the work. And I'm just going to block it down.
That piece of sandpaper is pretty worn out. I'll finish up locking this one side and then I'll do the other side off camera. There you have it. Nice and smooth, nice and straight. I'm going to go ahead and do this side off the camera, and then I will probably do the 320 grit, and then I'll be back. All right, guys, I'm back. The trunk lid is all sanded down with 180, 320, and then I went ahead and just did the 600. Didn't want to bore you guys with some more sanding video. So I'm going to paint the trunk lid and that door tonight, and these 4 balances pieces. Floor looks like it's full of dust. It's not. It's just that guide coat that's stuck to the floor right now. I just need to wash down the floor. What I'm going to do now is get the journey cabinet out of the spray booth so that I can sweep and mop the spray booth floor and start getting these panels in there. I need to hang the door up and the balance pieces up in the air, and then the trunk lid's just going to sit on a stand. So let me get at it. Try to move a few things around here. Gonna put the journey cabinet over here next to the tapper for now. There is the final painted journey cabinet. Nice, smooth blue paint job. It's kind of really hard to see, but you get the idea. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off and get the booth spray swept out and mopped. All right, I got the parts in the spray booth. They are warming up right now. Got a door here. As you can see, it's hanging up in the same direction that it would be bolted to the car. Got a couple of balance pieces hanging up and the trunk lid. So I'm going to get these blown off and then mix up some sealer and get ready to start painting. While I'm waiting for this to warm up, I'll just kind of explain how I paint in here. This is a cross flow spray booth. So these are the intake filters over here, the exhaust filters over there. Now when you paint in a cross flow spray booth, it is always best to start with the parts closest to the intake filter and work your way towards the exhaust filter. So for instance, I'm going to put a coat of paint on these 2 balance pieces first. Then I'll put a coat of paint on the trunk lid. Then I'll put a coat of paint on these 2 balances. Then I'll do the door last. By doing that, you don't have any dry paint land on your wet surface. If I were to paint these, put a coat of paint on these and the door first, when I went to do the trunk lid, all the air is moving towards the exhaust fan. So as the air and the overspray is moving towards the exhaust fan, it's going to stick onto your wet paint that you just did. So it's always good to start from the back and work your way to front. Right now I am mixing up the epoxy primer. That should be done in about 5 minutes or so. I got to blow the parts off and I will be back. Alright, I'm going to wax and grease remover all these parts. Now we can go ahead and mix up a batch of that. It's a 2-to-1 mix because we're going to use it as a sealer. We'll go to 10 ounces. 5 ounces of hardener. Yep, let's open another one. There's no 15 line on here, so go between the 14 and 16, and then we'll take it up to 20 ounces with the reducer. I'm using a medium reducer. Stir this up real good, and then we will go out there and put the sealer on. I still have to tack cloth off the panels. I'm going to tack cloth off the trunk lid and door with a tack cloth and a blowgun. SATA 2000. I'm going to wait a minute to put that into the cup. Let's go out there and tack cloth. You know what? I'll put it in there real quick. It'll be all right. More than enough sealer? Probably a little too much. dry, then we can tack cloth it off and start with the base coat. Now with the base coat, I bought a gallon of base coat when I started painting that front clip. I realized that this paint is really transparent. So what I did was I called the paint store and I ordered another quart of paint. So this other quart of paint, what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to do the first coat of color with this quart versus out of the gallon. Reason being that if this doesn't match the gallon, it'll be obvious, you know, if you go to paint a part and you run out of the gallon and you're using it out of here. So by using this for the first coat, it's not going to change the color whatsoever, because we're doing 4 coats of color on this, because like I said, it's so transparent. I'm going to try to I under-reduced it on the last one after the first coat because I realized that was happening. So, but you'll get to see here when I spray it how it's pretty transparent. All right, I already stirred it up in the can. Once again, I like to poke holes through the lip so that when I pour it, whatever ends up in this lip goes back down into the can. We're going to put this gallon of paint on the shaker for about 10 minutes. Crank it down real tight. All right, we're done with the paint shaker. I'm going to go ahead and mix this paint up. I'm going to do, let's do 12 ounces. This is normally a 1-to-1 mix. So if it's 12 ounces of color, it's 12 ounces of reducer. Once again, I'm using a medium reducer. We're not going to go 12 to 12. We're going to go 12 to, we're going to take it up to 20. We're going to do 8 ounces of reducer rather than 12 ounces of reducer. So we're going a little lighter on the reducer because the color is pretty transparent. Even though this color looks identical to the other color that's mixed up, that's not always the case. Pretty much, it's never the case. It never works out to be the same. Use this until it's all gone, and then we will mix up from the gallon. No need for a strainer, it's built into the lid. You guys are wondering where my strainers are. There and tack cloth off the panels. up in the camera. On my first coat, on the last set of parts I painted, I mixed it 1-to-1 like I'm supposed to, and it was super transparent. So this time it did not mix it 1-to-1, it went a little bit less. So that is definitely better. I'm still not too concerned about the color matching because after the first coat last time, I started reducing it less with the gallon of paint, so I'm going to do that again. I'm still going to put 4 coats of paint on. The last coat, I just put it on real dry as a drop coat. I kind of back off a little bit farther and just kind of let the metallics fall. Let's just do the exact same mixture as we did last time. There was a little bit of paint left over from the last batch. I went ahead and put it back in the quart. Now I put it back in the quart and it's reduced, so I need to keep that in mind for when I take more paint out of there and I reduce it. I have to realize that, hey, it's already a little bit thinner than it was the last time I did it because what I put back in there was already reduced. These are just a few things it's good to remember when you're doing it. Also spray gun settings, air pressure, temperatures, all that stuff plays a role in all this. And I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to be like, you can't panel paint, you can't panel paint. Well, hopefully I'll prove some people wrong and it'll turn out good. But my luck, it probably won't match and I'll have to do it over. But like I said the other day, if something like that happened, it's really not a big deal. Put the car together, 600, wet sand it down, and just shoot a little bit more color and clear it again. Okay, so I went up to 12 again, and I'm going to go to 20. Going to mix this, put it in the gun. Once I put this in the gun, I am going to mix up one more batch, same exact way, 12 to 20. Only need about 5 minutes between coats. It's about 80 degrees in there right now, 81 it says. And I am using a medium reducer. As you put more coats on, you usually need a few more minutes dry time between coats, especially with clear. We are going to be putting 4 coats of clear on these parts. I'm putting 4 nice heavy coats of clear on these parts because I really want to wet sand and buff this out. And that's the best way to do it. I will be starting with 1,000 grit on a sanding block. The 1,000 grit on the sanding block is just going to be cutting down the clear coat, flattening it back out from all the layers of paint that make it ripply again. 1,000 grit, and then we'll go to 1,500 grit, then we'll go to 2,000 grit, and then we'll use the DA sander and do 3,000, 5,000, 8,000, and then we'll buff it out with 2 different compounds, and we should be in good shape. Painting cars are a lot of work. There's a lot to them. You don't just sand a panel once or twice. You sand a panel a ton of times. 12, go back up to 20. There we go. This is a PPG product. Omni is a lower quality of the PPG product. I like using this better for the old cars because the metallics and the colors match the original paint better. DBC, for instance, is one of their top of the line paints, PPG. It would be a real vibrant color. And for this car, we're just trying to bring it back to original with a really nice paint job on it. You know, with a nice glossy paint job on it. Obviously, if we're doing some, you know, expensive paint, we're not going to use Omni. It's not really much cheaper anymore. Everything's just so expensive, but I mean, it because once you factor in that I bought a gallon and a quart, you know, not too much cheaper. But I'm doing this because I'm trying to recreate the original looking paint. Go out there and get our coat on. right, coat number 2 is done. 2 more coats of color to go. Best thing is don't rush it. And always wait until your last coat of color is fully dry. You can tack cloth it off before you clear it, because if you get in a hurry and you put the last coat of color on and then you start clearing, if that color is not dry all the way, you can actually create blotchiness in your paint job. Blotchiness is a little bit different than modeling. Modeling is when the metallics are sitting funny in the paint. That's why on my 4th coat, I like to back away a little bit more and kind of, you know, let it blow out in a bigger pattern onto the panel so that the metallics, you know, spread out as they're coming out of the gun. If you noticed on the trunk lid, I am painting from front to back rather than right to left. I'm going from the back of the trunk lid to the front to the back and forth that way, because when I go to paint the quarter panels on the car, I'm going to paint it that same direction. So the quarter panels will be going this way, I paint the top of the quarter panels this way. That's why I'm painting the trunk lid that way, so that it all are going the same direction all the way across. These type of older colors, the metallics aren't real vibrant, so chances of it, you know, you noticing a difference with the metallic, probably won't really notice a difference, but it's good to practice the same method no matter what you're doing. You know, because this even applies with candy paint. If your silver, gold, or whatever color you put underneath your candy isn't perfectly smooth and, you know, not blotchy, you don't want modeling in the silver, you want it to be nice and even base coat. If you have stripes in your silver or your gold or whatever color you're using underneath your candy, when you put that first coat of candy on, you're going to see dark lines everywhere where that silver gold underneath it is striped. So when you're painting, just keep that in the back of your head. Just kind of think in your head like, I need to lay this down as if I'm doing a candy paint job. You know, once you do that, it definitely helps. I don't know how many of you guys have sprayed candy. It's definitely not an easy thing to do. You definitely cannot panel paint candy paint job. You have to paint the car in one full piece. I cut the door jambs in first, and inside the fenders and under the trunk and hood, and then I assemble the whole car. I tape it all off, and then I paint it as one full piece. I haven't done a candy paint job in many years. The last one I did was Candy Apple Red over Orion Silver by House of Colors. I find that House of Colors candies are pretty thin. They need quite a bit of coats to cover. That's just, you know, my opinion. You could probably reduce it a little bit less and be alright. The Orion Silver covers great. It's their candies that are really transparent. I think I ended up putting like 6 coats of candy on that car until I was happy with the color. I've done motorcycles and stuff like that since then, but not a full car. Motorcycles and stuff like that are a lot easier to do. All right, it's been about 8 minutes. We're going to go ahead and put on this 3rd coat. If you notice, I'm trying to paint the hanging parts by the trunk lid first, so that if any overspray falls, I'll wet it and smooth it out when I put the color on the trunk lid. keep an eye on. Every time you put a coat on, it's going to get darker and darker until it doesn't get darker anymore. So this last coat should be just fine. I'm going to let it set for about 10-15 minutes because there's a couple specks of dirt sitting on that trunk lid, so I want to go ahead and tack cloth that trunk lid before my last coat, just in case for some reason when I tack cloth that dirt off of there, there's a little black spot or something like that. I want to make sure that that last coat covers over that. So we're going to let it set for 10-15 minutes, come back, put the last coat on. Like I said, I'm going to back the gun away a little bit farther than I'm currently at, and we're just going to kind of mist it. And we're going to go from one side to the other and then back again. So we'll go over it twice. If you notice on the trunk lid, I'm doing the edges first. I always like to get the edges. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a really, really nice paint job and you can see primer through the edges. So that really bothers me. So I try to always hit those edges first, because then when you're spraying, if anything extra gets on those edges, it's not going to hurt. I mean, I've personally done that where, you know, I've sprayed an edge light on one of my own cars. I was painting the trunk lid. It was late at night. I was tired. The bottom of the trunk lid was light. You could almost see the primer through it, or the sealer through it. I never did anything with it. Nobody ever noticed it, but obviously I did. So I'll be back in about 10-15 minutes. We'll get this last coat on. I'm going to tack cloth this trunk lid down real quick. Top edge. Alright, let me go get the color and we'll put the last coat on. It's, like I said, it's really hard to show this color. It's like an aqua metallic color. right, I'm back, getting ready to mix up the clear coat. Base is all dry. There might be a lot more overspray in the booth with the clear. There usually is, but I'm noticing that my exhaust filters are starting to clog up. Time to change them. I don't know if I'm going to videotape all 4 coats of clear or not, but we'll see how it goes and see how much overspray is in there. I don't want to turn the booth off and change those filters unless I have to, because I don't want to start stirring up a bunch of stuff. There's always going to be dirt in your paint. I don't care what anybody says, you'll always get dirt in your paint. I'm just trying to minimize it as much as possible. Now this is a 4-to-1 clear. Go up to 16, and then 16 goes to 20. That's 4-to-1, and then we're going to put a little reducer in there. So take this up to 20. Then we're going to go up to 22 with the reducer. The only reason why I put a little reducer in here is to get it to lay down a little smoother. I am using a slow dry hardener, hopefully to get the clear to lay down a little flatter. It takes a little longer to set up between coats, but it usually flows out a little bit more because it has a little bit more time to dry, or yeah, a little bit more time to dry. So we're going to mix up this first batch here. This 22 ounces should be enough to put a coat on everything. This is a 1.3 tip versus a 1.4. I was using a 1.4 with the color and the sealer. So let's get this mixed up. We'll get it in the cup. Go out there. I'm going to tack cloth the trunk lid off one more time and the door, and we will be ready to put the first coat of clear on. Ready to clear. Like I said, there might be some a lot of overspray. I'm not sure yet. right, overspray wasn't too bad on that first coat. If you noticed, I bumped into that one part. Luckily, I didn't do any damage to it because I just tapped it a little bit on the backside. Something you gotta, you know, remember that you have stuff hanging. The first coat, I always put on a little bit drier, and then the second coat, I start laying it on a little thicker. That first coat, I kind of think of it as an adhesive, something that's gonna make the next coat stick to it. So we'll wait 10 minutes and we'll put another coat on. I'm gonna go ahead and mix up some more clear. Still, we're gonna do the same ratio, 4 to 1. So we're gonna go 16, 20 to 22. 2 is done. Now, if this were new car parts, we'd be done. 2 coats is plenty. Because, like I said, I'm going to do such an extensive wet sanding and buffing, we're going to go with 4 coats. We're going to wait a couple extra minutes this time, a little bit longer than we did on the first coat. As you can see, I'm starting to put it on a little heavier every coat. Now, the 3rd coat, the parts that are hanging up, I'm not going to put a coat of paint on those. And I'm not going to put a coat, clear on those. And I'm not going to put a coat of clear on the door jambs on the 3rd coat. On the 4th coat, I will do the hanging parts, the door jambs. There's no reason to put 4 coats of clear on the hanging parts or the door jambs. I'm not wet sanding and buffing them or anything like that. To be honest with you, 2 coats would have been sufficient. I probably could have got away with the 1st coat of not doing them, but it's okay. It's not a big deal. I'm going to go ahead and mix up some more clear. Put the rest of this in there that I have. Now I'm going to mix up more clear, and then when I dump it into this one, I like to stir it all together, just so that the 2 are stirred together. And we're just going to keep doing that same mixing ratio on this coat, 16, 20, 22. And then the last coat will probably have to mix a little bit less, just depending on how much is left over in the gun. I try not to throw away too much of this stuff. Now, when you guys are painting parts, and let's say you're doing silver or something like that, and you run out of clear, and you still have a couple more parts to paint, make sure you try to stick with the same manufacturer that you've been using for the paint job. Because I've noticed over the years, certain clear coats will have a little bit of a yellowish tint to them. This is pretty clear. It looks like it might be a little yellow because of the reflection from the cabinet, but it's not. This is actually a really clear. I've used some in the past that do have a yellow tint to them, and that can totally change the outcome of your color. But all right, I'm going to go ahead and mix this up and wait for the next coat, and we will get you back in there. Seems like the overspray is not too bad, so I think we'll be fine for the last 2 coats. coat number 3. We have one more coat to go. Let's see how much clear we have left. Because basically what we want to do is fill this cup all the way up, because we know that on the first and second coat, I still had a little bit left over when it was filled up. I don't want to mix not enough and be in the middle of that door and run out of clear. So let's get this last little bit mixed up. This coat didn't take as much as the previous coat because I didn't do the door jambs or those hanging parts. This last coat we will be doing all of it. I like to reuse these liners. I don't see any reason why you can't. So we really only need to put in here probably another 4 ounces of clear. So we'll do 4 ounces of clear, 1 ounce of hardener, and on this last coat, let's do an ounce of reducer. We'll mix it in with the rest of that stuff. So it'll be a little bit, tiny bit thinner. Hopefully these videos will help people out that are getting started doing this. I'm not an expert by any means. I've been doing it for 30 years, but it still doesn't mean that there's not stuff I can learn. And you know, some of the stuff I'm doing, people may not agree with. I do it the way I do it because it just works for me, but that doesn't mean it's right or wrong. You know what I mean? You just gotta, it's basically just trial and error. The door is really good. There's barely any dirt in it. Trunk lid does have some dirt in it. It's not a big deal. There's no like specks of black dirt or anything like that. So it'll completely wet sand and buff out. It will not be a problem whatsoever. I'm going to be doing the motor and stuff on this car too, as far as getting it running and stuff. Unfortunately, the back part of my building's not done yet, so I'm going to have to do it up here, which I normally don't like doing any sort of mechanical work where I do body work, but it's not like I'm rebuilding the motor or anything like that, so it shouldn't be too bad. I'm just basically pulling the motor out, degreasing it, painting it, and putting it back in. Perfect mix there. We'll probably have a little bit left over, not a big deal. I use my gun washing cabinet to clean my guns after I'm done painting. My clear coat guns, I do not put in the gun washing cabinet. The reason why I don't put my clear coat guns in the gun washing cabinet is there is metallic paint in that cabinet, because obviously I wash all my guns that I spray color with and primer with in that cabinet. I just get afraid that if I put my clear gun in that cabinet, I might get some metallics in here. If I get metallics in my clear gun, and I go to, let's say I go to spray a white paint job, and now all of a sudden I have silver or blue metallic in my white paint job. So this, I just have a 5-gallon container that I keep a lid on. I open it up, I put a funnel in there, and I thoroughly rinse it out with lacquer thinner inside and out. And that's pretty much about it. I'm going to shut this off for a minute. I'll get you guys out there for the last coat, and we'll go from there. right, that was the last coat. See how we did material-wise. I'm going to let that dry for about 15 minutes or so. Let the fans run for another 15-20 minutes. This type of clear I don't bake. It doesn't do well when you bake it, it dries out. Yeah, it looks like we only have a couple ounces of clear left, so we did really well with that. This I just put off to the side. It'll harden up, throw it right in the garbage. Plenty of clear on there to wet sand and buff it. Won't be an issue. Everything looks really good, looks really straight. Once I wet sand it with a 1000 grit, it'll be nice and flat. I think that's about it. I will take you out there in about 15 minutes after it sets up enough and kind of walk around with the camera for a second and see if we can't get a better picture of it for you. All right, I'll take you in there in a minute. If anybody was wondering, I sprayed my base coat at 32 PSI and my clear at 29 PSI. It seems to be a pretty good number for me. I probably could have went up maybe to 30 PSI on the clear, but I like to try to keep it a little bit on the lower side and just go a little bit slower when I spray. Let's take you in there to get a final look. To take a good photograph or a good video of this. No runs, no sags or anything like that. A little bit of orange peel, nothing major. Door jambs look nice. I always try to make sure I get in cast where the interior door panel goes. This is a really clean car. Just about no pitting or anything underneath those door jambs. Same thing with the trunk lid and the hood. It's just real nice. Here's the trunk lid. Laid out real nice. Like I said, a little bit of orange peel, but there is 4 coats of clear, 4 coats of base, and a coat of sealer. There's 9 layers of paint that have just been sprayed on these parts. So that's why you start to get a little bit of an orange peel. But it looks pretty flat. It's not bad at all. Once I wet sand and buff it, it'll turn out real nice. So this is going to finish this video up, guys. Thanks for watching. If you could please like and subscribe to my videos, that would be awesome. If you guys have any questions or input,